Hey everybody, Hunter back again from Showtime Studios. We're going to go ahead and do part number 2 of the frame stretch tutorial. And I'm not going to do both rails on camera. I'm just going to do the one to show you, the process and pretty much how easy it is to do. And then we'll do the second one after we get done with our build that we have coming up this weekend. So what we have laid out here is the same thing, the rails, the stretch piece, and the back rail here that we had from the first video. And what we're going to do next is I've got a scrap piece of plastic laying here, just a scrap piece of sheet plastic. And I was talking about the spacing for where the suspension pieces mount and the where the holes are. So what I want to do with that is I'm actually going to take my drill bit, and I need to actually switch to a little bit bigger drill bit here. And this is a pretty handy little trick to do because it will allow you to have a very good lineup point for these holes for your rear suspension, which is a critical point because you want to make sure that it's lined up side to side exactly in the same spot. So we're going to go ahead and chuck a little bit bigger bit in the drill here. And all we're going to do with this is we're just going to hold the frame rail. These two holes right here is what I need to transfer. And we're just going to take the drill bit, we're going to drop it down the center of the hole there. And we're just going to make a mark onto our plastic. We're not going to drill all the way through it right now. And then we're going to move to the front one. Straight down through in the center of the hole, and we're going to make a mark. And now we're just going to finish those marks all the way through. And this is just something to make sure that you have an accurate spacing and everything is lined up the way that it needs to be to fit the mounting brackets that you're working with. And now that I have the holes drilled through there, these are the mounting brackets, and of course on the back of that there's two small pins there that you can see. And we're just going to set those onto our piece of plastic and just see if we've got it drilled centered where we need to. And I'll take the knife, and actually the hobby knife, and just spin it a little bit in those holes just to make them a little bit bigger on this outside. Just like that. And what we're trying to do is make sure that the suspension piece will drop down into those holes flush, just like that. And that way you now have a little template for transferring the holes over to your frame rails. So what we're going to do next is, this is the one hole that we moved from the rail here. This spacing is where one of the brackets goes. So we cut that down the middle of that bracket. So that took this hole and moved it to the front. That'll be the very first bracket that we put on, which is going to be for the added axle. So we're just going to take our little template that we made, and we're going to take a toothpick, and we're just going to drop down into that. We're going to take our bridge piece and slide underneath. And once we get that slid underneath, we're going to line everything up so that those holes are, or both frame pieces are square and level. And then we're just going to drill, just going to put a mark on the bridge piece, just like that. And that's got the front spacing the way that we want it. Now we're going to move on to the back. And of course we have the hole back here in the kit rail that we're going to use. And I may have to cut this piece of plastic a little bit. It might run into this fifth wheel mount. I don't know, we'll see here. Nope, we got it. And we're just going to slide the bridge piece back and line it up. And we'll line up the mounting holes. We'll go ahead and drill out onto the bridge piece. Alright, now that we have the bridge piece marked, with the proper spacing, we're going to go ahead and drill all the way through. And this is something you want to do before you do any gluing or anything like that, you know, because it gives you a reference point, and this way it'll make sure that everything lines up exactly the way that it should. So when you put this in, it's almost like putting a kit piece in that already has the holes in it, and you're good to go. So we're going to go ahead and drill that through, and now we're going to check this. And of course we know we need to make the hole a little bit bigger, so I'm going to go ahead and put the knife back in here, and we're going to spin it a little bit. Don't make it too big. And do the same thing in this one. That should be pretty good. So we're going to set those two pieces back together, and then we'll take our suspension piece, our bracket, and we're going to drop it in there, and we're going to make sure that everything lines up and the suspension piece goes into the hole, which it does. Everything looks pretty good there. Same thing with the front one here. I'll go ahead and drop that into place and make sure that it lines up. Now that one there, I've got a little bit of a gap that's pushing the frame rails open. So what you want to do in that case is we need to make this hole a little bit bigger toward the rear of the bracket. And the good thing about a bracket like this is it has a little bit of a flange on it that covers it up. So if these holes aren't, you know, exactly perfect as far as the shape, that's fine, because the bracket will cover up any excess. And just want to check the bracket and make sure that the frame rail pieces touch together. They do, so everything's lined up. And now you have an exact spacing from this bracket to this bracket of 2 inches. And from this one to the one in the rear is 2 inches. So everything is lined up right where it needs to be. Proper spacing, good to go. So now we're going to move on to putting a little bit of glue on the frame rails. And we'll probably be using the Testors 8872, which is the black glue that I always recommend, or I call it the black glue. It's in a black bottle. The glue's actually clear. And I don't put a whole lot of this on. You just want to kind of get a little bead down the rail and across the flanges. Don't need a whole lot of it. We just want enough of this black glue just to stick the parts together. Alright, and once you have them stuck together like that, they're just lightly touching each other. Take your straight edge. Now, a good thing about this straight edge is it has a piece of cork on the back of it that's about probably a 1/16 of an inch thick. And when you set that down, it actually raises the straight edge up off of the workbench a little bit, which works great for doing something like this on these rails. And you can just take the rail and slide it over against the straight edge and make sure that everything is against that straight edge, including your bridge piece, all the way down the rail. And we're looking pretty good there. So the next step that we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of the Tamiya Extra Thin, not a whole lot of it, and we're just going to come in and drop that on the join. You don't want a whole lot of the liquid glue on one of these bridges because it will keep ghosting the seam if you put too much on. So just get a little bit in there to make sure that it goes through the whole seam, but it doesn't, you don't want it squeezing out and having a mess. So don't put too much of that liquid glue on these seams. The other thing that I do not recommend on this is super glue. Super glue is not strong enough for a frame. You might get by with it in the way that I do it because you have the suspension pieces that's actually adding support also. But like I say, I do not recommend the super glue. It has no shear strength to it, and the load that's being put on a model is going to be up and down, the force on it and the weight and everything. So I would stay away from super glue for this. But that's basically all there is to, you know, gluing the bridge piece in and squaring the frame rail up. Now, if you have a frame rail with something that sticks up off the top or the bottom of the rail, where you can't really put a straight edge on it, it gets a little bit more difficult. You've kind of got to do that by eye, and you know, sometimes that can be a little tricky. But you just let this set, and of course our bridge piece, when we made it, is a little bit taller than the frame rail, and that's what we want. We already have our locating holes already drilled, so we're good there. Once this all dries, we'll come back in and we'll sand this bridge piece down till it's flush with the frame rails, and everything across here will be flush, and then we'll sand the top and bottom channel, and we should be stuck together enough just to flip this over, which is something I don't recommend at this point right now, but we're going to go ahead and do it just to show you something. And this is probably not a good time to flip this frame rail over, but I'm just going to leave it standing up on the end like that just to show you what I'm talking about. We were talking about the cross members and how all this stuff locates. When all this is dry and you slide the cross member in, what's going to happen is half of this cross member will be on the kit rail, half of it will be on the bridge. Same thing with the front. You will be adding a cross member, so that's something that you will, if you don't have two kits, you're going to have some in the, at least in the parts box, or you can use my casting tutorial that I've done, and you can cast this part. And that's a quick, you know, simple part really to cast, and then that would give you your extra cross member. But the way that I do this, with the suspension mounts being at each one of these points, there has to be a cross member there. There is on the real truck, so that's what gives the side-to-side strength. But doing it this way, it actually uses the cross member to bridge onto your piece that you've added in. You don't need to put any extra plates on the inside of the frame rail. You don't need to cut these things at an angle like they do on a real truck when they stretch it, or anything like that. So I'm just going to slide this back over and set it against a straight edge, and make sure everything stays square here while the glue's drying. And so that's pretty much what we do when we're putting the actual bridge piece in the frame and making it longer. And like I say, this is a 2-inch stretch that we put on this one. And when we do the next part of the tutorial, we'll come back and we'll put the notches in for the airbag underneath where that needs to go, which we'll do the measurements on the kit rail, and then we'll transfer that over to the bridge piece so we can locate the airbag. And we'll go ahead and start doing some sanding and cleanup work, and we'll show you how it comes out. So if you have any questions or concerns, leave me a comment on the video, and I'd be more than glad to answer those for you. And like always, I thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.